Welcome to Capitalize Your Finances, the podcast that's your ultimate guide to mastering personal finances and unlocking the secrets of entrepreneurship. Each week, we dive into the world of personal finance and business development and have fascinating conversations with industry experts, seasoned entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their insights, strategies, and stories to help you get ahead in life. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur looking to scale your business or someone just starting out on your financial path, this podcast is your go-to resource for inspiration and actionable insights.
Welcome back to Capitalize Your Finances. As always, I'm your host, Chris Bray Poniotu, and the Cap in Capitalize. And today, we have 7 tips to be better with your money. Now, I am extremely excited for this episode. And honestly, I could talk about infinite amount of tips with your money, but that'd be like 24 hours long and absolutely no one would watch it. So I tried my absolute darnest to whittle it down to the best 7. Now, these 7 tips to be better with your money, it is in no particular order. So it's not like the, least best to absolute best. So if you are like me and you like to listen to these things and take notes, don't try to order them. Just write them down and absorb everything for what it actually is. And so with that being said, I am dying to get into these and I want to rip the Band-Aid off and just start cracking. So the first tip to be better with your money, remove the emotion. So I've mentioned this in previous episodes before, but if you have not watched that or you're new to the podcast, I want to take a trip down memory lane and get you all caught up to speed. So this industry, the financial advising, planning, and investment world, does an absolute piss poor job at getting you to understand how to become appropriately attached to money. Now, what do I mean by that? When I was at 2 of the biggest firms in the world, I was taught to match someone's emotional unintelligence with a portfolio that makes them feel good. That is so disgusting. It is wrong. And in many cases, it will hurt you in the long run. So that's the first piece that I want to kind of give you a taste of when I'm talking about removing the emotion. But the next thing I want to talk about is actually what I've talked a lot about on my show in the past, as well as in my book and on my course. So if you could remove emotion when it comes to money, first off, ask yourself this. If you are emotional with your money choices, whether it's investing or having enough money in your savings or checking account, whatever the case may be, and you remove all of that, that is one of the 3 greatest fears and stressors of an average person's life completely gone. That's huge. And you just act as you need to, as what is prudent. And so for you listening, if you're trying to capitalize today, let's think about this. Whatever your expenses are, again, money in, money out, but you're probably spending some money every single month, whether it's 3, 4, 5 grand, 6 grand, whatever the case is. That number you need to understand because you need to have that dollar amount floating in your checking account at all times. Again, money in, money out. But if you can have that floating there, not only is that prudent, if you have an extra spendy month, I know as we are recording this, we're just recovering from the holiday season. And unless you don't love anyone, you probably got gifts for people. And so with that being said, you've got that set aside in your checking. And then for savings, if you capitalize your savings accordingly, you got 3 to 6 months sitting there for whatever emergency. And then after that, you would want to either max out your retirement plan or go and invest within an IRA or a Roth IRA or maybe even a non-retirement account. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all of this up is notice how I'm not getting emotional about it. That's just one of those things that you have to do. And a lot of you out there that are listening in, you obviously don't know what to do. And that's okay. That's why you're listening to the show. And that's why I'm giving you this advice. But if you're emotionally attached to all of these things, it is going to just kill you. It is absolutely going to kill you. And also notice how I just rattled off all of those things of what you should do. The industry makes it a whole heck of a lot more complex, unnecessarily complex. And it's not only just the planning side of things, it's the investment side of things too. There's really no rhyme or reason why a lot of people are making these investment decisions, because they have no backing or understanding of what actually needs to happen. And so one thing that I always coach people on that are listening in or fans or email us regularly, if you are deciding to use a planner or advisor, ask them what their framework is. And if there's like just this convoluted emotional jargon and it's just not sitting well, get a new one. Now, if you're deciding to do things on your own and you're a do-it-yourselfer, which is totally okay, spoiler alert, I'm one of those, and you do have those emotional instabilities in your monetary life, you need to figure out what the root of the problem is, and you need to eliminate those as quickly as possible, okay? Now, the second tip to get better with your money, know what you own in your portfolio. So, there are a lot of investment mistakes that people make out there. And actually, everyone makes an investment mistake in their life. In fact, I remember I went on a podcast. I think the podcast was actually called My Worst Investment Podcast Ever. I think that was the direct title. And I remember my marketing team, they were talking to me saying, "Are you sure you want to go on this?" I'm like, "Well, of course. Why wouldn't I?" You know, you don't really learn a ton when you have these amazing investments. That just kind of showed that you were right. In some cases, maybe not as right as you thought, but you can kind of hide behind that. If there's an investment that's not going as well, or in some cases loses value, and then you start digging into the investment more and more, that's where the real learning comes into play. And you could actually go with every aspect in your life. If you are into lifting and you and you're going for a 1-rep max and you're halfway there, and then your body just says, "Nope, not today," I can guarantee you are going to figure out a whole hell of a lot more of how to get that next half of the lift done given that unit of weight, versus if you got it super easy, you're just moving on to the next thing and there's really no learning involved. But there's a lot of issues when it comes to investing and knowing what's in your portfolio. FOMO, fear of missing out. Holy crap. This is 2024. I mean, unless you have been living under a rock for the last 4 or 5 years, it has been crazy. And I'm not giving investment advice here, but whether it's high-flying stock, certain digital currencies, types of real estate, or just real estate in general, it is absolutely astounding how many people invest just because they don't want to miss out on the next best thing. They don't even know if it works. They're just blindly going in, throwing the dart and saying, "Hey, let's just pray to God that this thing works out." Now, I'm actually going to take this tip of money a little bit deeper, and I'm actually going to go over a story. So, yeah, there are the people out there where it's a fear of missing out. You don't understand what's going on. And frankly, there is a lot of lack of intelligence in the world of investing out there. But even some of the smartest people out there make mistakes. And that's why I would say it pays to have a really great group of core people in your corner that are like-minded in the investment landscape. Because if you can bounce ideas off of them, it's kind of like you've got built-in bumpers. So this was a couple years ago. I was actually talking to one of my go-to asset managers, Lance. And we were just catching up on family and in portfolios and all that. And again, for compliance out there, this is not investment advice. Past performance doesn't guarantee future returns, all that fun stuff. We were talking about Lockheed Martin. And I was thinking about investing in Lockheed Martin for myself. And, you know, I'd done some diligence on it, and, you know, I'd looked at some numbers, and that was the first place I went. So I'm calling and I'm asking Lance, and And Lance does a great job of putting me in my place, but he does it he does it with a lot of humor. And so I call and I tell him, and he goes, well, why? And I explain to him why as far as the numbers. And he goes, but why? So now I'm getting a little frustrated, but I'm also laughing, and I keep digging deeper and deeper. And then he asked me, he's like, do you know how to fly any of their planes? I go, no. He goes, you ever been in one? No. Well, do you understand the parts that go into the plane? I go, no. It's like, well, what are you doing? If you don't even use it, why are you thinking about buying the company if you don't understand it? And that was a huge wake-up call for me, because even someone that's obsessed with this industry, I am there. I did all of this diligence, academic diligence, numerical diligence, but I didn't really understand truly what I was getting into, truly what I was investing in. And it's one of those things where, you know, if you don't understand what you're buying in your portfolio, you probably shouldn't buy it. So there's one story before we move on to number 3 that I want to share with you that really opened my eyes to just putting the nail in the coffin with understanding the idea of knowing what's in your portfolio. So I think this was about a year or so ago. I was watching a podcast of a famous investor, Monish Pabrai, and he was talking about the 3 types of investments out there. And the first investment he was talking about was one that you choose to invest in, and it does really, really well. Okay, well, you know what the end of that story is. It's great. Then you have the investments that you choose not to invest in, and they do really, really well. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the second one because they go, oh my gosh, I missed out on whatever it is, the next Amazon or Microsoft or whatever the case is, the next stock that just blew up. But did it really hurt you? No. It's okay to not swing at certain great businesses out there if you don't understand them. And there will be so many people that will come to you and they will call you every name in the book, okay? And trust me, there have been investments that have passed me by, and I look back and go, probably should have done it. But did I really lose anything? No. I didn't have any. I guess my risk was not taking any action, but that's okay. Sometimes it pays to take no action, and sometimes the best action is no action. But it's the last type of investment that kills you, where you've done the diligence, you choose to invest in it, and it does poorly, perpetually. Not to get on a little tangent, but I've actually taken that concept of investing and I've actually applied it to the people I surround myself with. So there are people out there in my life, which there aren't a ton. I try to keep my circle pretty tight. That circle, that concentrated circle, it's a great circle. And you know, people have different opinions and different industries, genders, whatever the case may be. But they're all great. And I'm super thankful for that. There are also people out there that are great people. They're just not my people. It's just not for me. And that's okay. I know they're great for a lot of other people. It's not my cup of tea. Now, I don't have any of these last type of people in my life anymore, but it's the people out there, and I can guarantee you know exactly who I'm talking about, where you were tricked and fooled into thinking that these people are the great people that you need in your life, and they ruin you. They absolutely ruin you. They drag you down, whether it's directly or indirectly. They talk about everyone else behind their backs. They siphon money and they never pay it back, but they always make these promises. They're suave about it. They're just a bunch of cancer, and you want that out of your life. So as far as knowing what is in your own portfolio, yes, I was talking about the money side of things, and that is a tip that you need to understand. But as a tangent, You need to understand who's in your portfolio when it comes to life. Now, the third tip to get better with money: know the difference between a genuine steward of your success versus a salesman disguised as an investment professional. So I'm going to read that again because it's a little bit long. Know the difference between a genuine steward of your success versus a salesman disguised as an investment professional. So I first want to tell you, profound financial success, it is not going to be easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. And in order to become successful, and I learned this later on, and I wish I learned this earlier on, you need to have a combination of, and know the combination of absolute truths and relative truths. You need to blend them together. So what is an absolute truth? Here's the easiest example. High interest rate debt is not good. Well, yeah, no duh. We all know that. It's pretty absolute, okay? Relative truth. Real estate can be a good long-term investment option. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it's definite. And I'm not saying it's the only one. But it could be a really good option. Could be. And when you understand how to blend these absolute truths and relative truths together, you know, it's interesting. In our industry, everyone talks about, I'm a fiduciary. Does anyone really know what that means? I mean, it's kind of overblown and overused because if you think about it, everyone's a fiduciary in their own business. Think about a firefighter. You have a fiduciary duty to save the people in the burning building. Or if you are if you're a builder, you have a fiduciary duty to build this home or condo or whatever to the best of your abilities. And in finance, I don't know who did it, but someone just hooked onto this word and has ran off with it. And it's just super overblown. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's just kind of, it's a lot. Like, it's annoying. And I'm telling you this because people might say, oh, I'm a fiduciary. Okay. Well, do your actions or do your words actually match the actions that you have? And by matching absolute truths with relative truths when you're having conversations with people, if you know that they have that same mentality that you have, you're going to quickly understand, okay, this person is a genuine steward of my success, whether I work with them or not, versus someone that's trying to be a sleazy salesman. Now, when I was writing this episode or thinking about this episode, what came to my mind is financial influencers. And, you know, my brother and I have talked about this a ton. There are so many people out there that just hook onto these absolute truths and blow them out of the water to an inappropriate degree. So the first one I'm going to describe is good old Dave Ramsey's debt philosophy. All debt is bad. That is not true, Dave. That is not true. Not even remotely close. Yeah, credit card debt, 27% interest rate. That is never good for anyone other than the credit card companies. But you get my point. Dave has made his living off of hooking into this emotional unintelligence that people have when it comes to debt and just dragging it down. Not all debt is bad. It comes down to the interest rate. Now, on the flip side, you've got someone like Rob Kiyosaki, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he is the total opposite end of the spectrum. Debt is like his favorite thing. He loves debt. But if you think about it, that's also not true. I've never met someone that's like, man, I got to where I'm at because I am drowning in debt. That doesn't happen. So understanding the gray area of the absolute truth and relative truth, it's not a matter of Dave over here, Rob Kiyosaki over here. It's somewhere in the middle. I'm not pointing to me. Well, I kind of am pointing to me. But like, you get my point. It's somewhere in the middle and it's gray. Now, again, this doesn't apply just to your investment portfolio or money. You can apply this to every aspect of your life. And you can actually apply it to every industry. So, you know, one industry I think of, and I'm probably going to get some slack for this, but I really don't care, is like the real estate world. And it's interesting because whether it's real estate or car sales, think about it for a second. How do they get paid? And I'm not talking about like developers or investors. I'm talking agents, salesmen. It's really easy. Are you buying a home? You selling a home? Or a car? Are you buying or are you selling a car? It's pretty black and white. And when you have conversations with people, it's interesting because you can tell, or at least I can tell the difference between someone that, okay, they're just trying to get a sale versus someone that is having a genuine, profound conversation about their industry. So here's an example. Take real estate right now. So as of 2024, interest rates are higher than they have been the last couple of years. And in theory, the Federal Reserve has said that they are going to start to come down in 2024. Now, again, we haven't gone through 2024 yet, but that's what they're saying. So if that is the case, when interest rates decrease, real estate tends to favor that as far as prices go. And we saw that in 2020, in 2021 when interest rates dropped and people were just selling their homes left and right. So you could say all of that absolute truth because that is true. That is what happens, and that is what generally happens. But then if you just hook it into the sale, it's like, no, like kick rocks. I don't need that. Versus you have much more of a comprehensive conversation, and it's not just real estate. You're able to think about other things that are maybe directly or indirectly related to real estate, and you can have a much more comprehensive answer. That would be someone that I'd go, okay, I could get behind this person. Same thing with a car. You know, you go into a Ford dealership. You're probably going to be sold a Ford. Like, let's just call it what it is. That's not a bad thing. But imagine if you walked into a Ford dealership and, you know, you had your mindset on a Ford F-150 and the salesman comes up and he's talking to you about whatever your heart's desires are. And you're getting a sense of, okay, he's really not trying to sell me hard on this car. He's just trying to figure out what I do, or what I need for this vehicle. And salesman keeps digging and digging and digging, and then after, he takes a deep sigh. He goes, you know, I know you came in here for a Ford. I know you're super gung-ho on the Ford F-150, but with what you're trying to do, you know, within our dealership, we have other cars that are not Ford. Your best bet is actually talking to Toyota or Kia. And this is why. And he goes through every single example. Now, it's okay if he gets paid on that, right? Maybe a little bit here or there. But as a consumer, how great are you going to feel about that? That's a fiduciary mindset. That is a genuine steward of your trust. That's not a sleazy salesman, and you need to know the difference between the two. Now, the fourth tip to get better with your money, understand the concept of matching investments with time horizons, not conventional risk. So this is a great one, and I've talked about this a decent amount over the years, and people keep asking me about it, so I'm going to keep talking about it. There's a huge misconception of risk when it comes to money. And so let's think about this for a second. Traditionally speaking, people say, hey, the stock market is risky. Okay, well, that's an absolute truth. And yeah, businesses are risky. And let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Capitalism can be very, very tough. It is grueling. It's brutal, but it can be extremely rewarding. And when it comes to understanding the stock market, and if you're trying to invest in the short run, yeah, that's extremely risky. You're basically playing Russian roulette. But in the long run, and this is not a quote of mine, this was a quote by Ben Graham, Warren Buffett's business partner, teacher back in the day. In the short run, the stock market is a voting machine, but in the long run, it's a weighing machine. And so it weighs heavily towards those that succeed, right? But in the short run, it's just, it's an absolute frenzy. So I want to re-educate the listeners that have been tuning in. And then to the new ones, I'm just giving you this advice right off the bat and these facts and figures. So instead of thinking about conventional risk, how do you feel about investing conservative or aggressive and then matching a portfolio based on how you feel? I want you to think about it in time horizons. So let's say that someone came in to my office, or let's say that, forget my office. Let's say you are sitting at home listening to this podcast, or you're watching this podcast and you are trying to save for a down payment on a home within 3 to 5 years. Could you invest it within the market? Yeah. Could you get lucky? Yeah. Could you also lose a lot in that short period of time? Yeah. Like imagine if you started doing this in 2005 and you were investing in the market and then you wanted a down payment for a home in 2008. You would have lost a lot of your money, and that would have been a really bad idea. On the flip side, if you know that these short-term strategies with the risk that you are taking relative to the unit of return that you could earn is not substantial, like a CD or a bond or a high interest savings account where you really can't lose money because they're FDIC insured or backed by the government if it's a government bond. Sure, you may not make, and you probably won't make as much as you would in the market, but given that time horizon, that is going to be the most prudent thing for you to look to utilize. Forget the whole conservative or aggressive side of things. Do what is prudent. That's one of my favorite words, prudency. It's the absolute opposite of being an idiot. And on the flip side of that, let's say that someone is looking to retire and they've got 15 or 20 or 25 years. Okay, well, can we guarantee this? No, but I do know that since 1950, there's never been a 15-year period where the market has not lost money, stock market. And I know there's never been a 25-year period since 1950 where the market has done about 8%, give or take. Okay, technically a little bit less, but I'm rounding up just to make the math very easy. Okay, I always round down when I'm writing plans, and I actually try to plan infinitely more conservative than what I think is probably going to happen. But you get my point. So given that time horizon, would it make sense to just buy or just stuff your money in a savings account over that period of time? Well, no, because you'd have to stuff a whole heck of a lot more money into that. Versus if you're investing prudently, given the time horizon, knowing that the weighing machine will eventually weigh appropriately, assuming you don't invest in like the worst investments of all time, you don't have to save as much because that compounding will make up for it. But again, that does not have anything to do with how do you feel about investing, aggressive, conservative. It's about prudency. We're about leveling up on this podcast, not taking a step backwards. So I want to actually conclude this tip before we move on to the commercial break with a nugget for you. If you are choosing to or working with an advisor or planner, ask them, this is your homework, ask your financial advisor or financial planner what their view is on the concept of risk. If it is the conventional wisdom that I just mentioned, as far as aggressive, conservative, all that fun stuff, and you've just got that gut feeling of this is a bunch of smoke and mirrors, run away as fast as humanly possible. Find another one because they're not worth it. I can tell you that. Okay. If on the flip side, they have a much more profound understanding of risk, and they're explaining this with different units of investments, whether it's stocks or bonds or preferred stocks or annuities or real estate or whatever the case may be, and they're able to conceptualize the investments given the unit of time relative to the risk and return that they're trying to achieve, then you've got a winner. And if you're trying to do this on your own, you've got to understand everything that I just said in the sentence before. Because if you don't, you're going to be no better off than those that are succumbing to the conventional understanding of risk, which is absolutely awful. Now, it is that time for today's sponsor, of our episode. And so what I'm going to do, as I always do, I'm going to take a swig of water. I'm going to come on back after the commercial is done, and we are going to knock out 5, 6, and 7 regarding the tips of money that you need to know.
Capitalizers, this episode is sponsored by the best-selling book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. Regardless of where you're at in your financial life, whether you're just beginning to express interest and commitment to your personal finances, at the pinnacle of your career, winding down into retirement, or thinking about your legacy for future generations, this book walks you through every step of the way so you can succeed on your terms and with your own values and passions guiding you. After reading this book, you will officially have Christopher A. Panayotou, the Cap in Capitalize, in your back pocket, guiding you in detail through every step of the way so that you can take charge of your finances, not the other way around. Head on over to Amazon.com today and start capitalizing your finances to the fullest with this incredible book, Capitalize Your Finances, the how-to financial framework that takes you from compoundingly clueless to monetarily magnificent. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome back from the break. I missed you dearly. And let's just keep cracking on these last 3 tips with... Almost sneezed here. I apologize. And we're not cutting this out, by the way, because there are no take-backsies in the grand scheme of life. We are going through number 5 as far as the tip that you're going to need to know to get better with your money. So number 5 is... know that there is such thing as having too much money as an emergency fund. So you're probably thinking, what do you mean? Like having too much money is a first world problem. That is very true, but there is such thing as having too much in your savings, and after that, what you need to do with it. So for those of you that are not aware of what I'm talking about, you need to make sure that you have a month's worth of expenses in your checking account at all times, 3 to 6 months in savings, depending on your circumstance. So let's say if you're, single and young and vibrant and healthy and you're working in a really riskless job when it comes to your body, you probably only need 3 months. But if you were, let's say, a construction worker and you got a family to feed and you're the only one working, and if you slipped a disc, you're out for months and you're not able to afford the cost of living, that's probably where you're going to want to have 6 months. Now, if you run a business, that's a totally different conversation because you got to understand your business relative to how much money you're bringing in. But in many ways, you understand there comes a point where you need what you need in your checking, and then you need 3 to 6 months in savings, or maybe a little bit more or less if you run a business, depending on the business. After that, it is silly to just keep hoarding cash. Now, the only exception I would give to that is, let's say you're saving up for something in the very near future. And we're talking within like 6 months or even a year or 2 years. I would still say, hey, you could invest in maybe an online savings account or a money market mutual fund that's FDIC insured, or government bonds, which aren't FDIC insured, but they are backed by the U.S. government. So, unless the government just goes under, I think you're going to be pretty good. And by the way, if that does happen, we've got a whole hell of a lot of other issues to deal with. But the point is, you're not going to be taking a gargantuan amount of risk for those short-term needs. But once you have your emergency fund all squared away, by definition, it does not make sense to have anything else on the sidelines, because at that point, you want to invest anything above and beyond that for the long run. There's a great quote by, oh my gosh, and of course, as I'm saying this, I'm blanking who actually said it, but it doesn't really matter. There's a great investment quote that has stuck with me for years, and the quote goes something like this: I take no risk so I can take all of the risk. I take no risk so I can take all of the risk. Think about this. As long as you have whatever you need for the short run all good to go today, and you're being prudent with the money above and beyond that, by definition, you are not taking risk within the grand scheme of your portfolio, or not portfolio, your financial plan. And so by definition, as you are investing for the long run, you quote unquote can take all of that risk, because you can risk not having this money today to reap the reward for tomorrow. Now, again, let's think about this for a second. I'm going to whip out my HP 12C calculator for a moment. Again, I got it on my app. And let's say that you are going to retire in 30 years. And let's say you have $0 today. Okay. So you need $1 million at that period of time in 30 years. And let's say the first option, you're earning 3% on, shorter term investments. And you just keep doing that and doing that and doing that. You would need to save about 21 grand a year to get to that million. But on the flip side, if you were earning 7%, what I would say is an appropriate long-term projection, you would only need to save $10,000 a year. So just to translate that for you, instead of saving 10 grand, you'd have to save 21. So you'd have to save twice as much to get to that goal. Another way of thinking about it is you're not having to save as much because as those investments start to compound, that compounding replaces what you're going to actually have to save, which means, again, you're not having to take as much risk, so you can take more risk, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Now, the sixth tip, and I know we're running out of time here. Marketing team is getting a little impatient, so I'm going to try to rip through these last two. The sixth tip that you need to get better with your money: surround yourself with people that are more financially literate than you and learn from them. So I have this mentality, and it has manifested itself over the last couple of years. I call it the concentrated portfolio lifestyle. So in investing, if one has a concentrated portfolio of really good investments, chances are they are going to do better than if they're just so diversified. If one of those investments do well, you're not going to feel it. Okay. Again, that's not a guarantee. It's just basic math. I've taken that mentality and I've applied it to not only planning, not only investing, I've applied it to people. And so if you talk to anyone that you know that is extremely successful financially, they're going to have different flavors on how they describe this, but they're going to tell you exactly what I'm telling you. You need to surround yourself with the smartest financial minds, and you need to shut up and listen to everything that they are saying. All of the amazing investors, the super investors that manage millions and millions, in some cases billions of dollars, that I've had on my show, that I've gotten to know personally, the one thing that they have in common is they all have their concentrated portfolios of people. Even Charlie Munger, when he was alive, he would go to the Los Angeles Country Club and he would have his same 6 or 7 investors every Friday. They would play bridge and they would talk about investments for hours. And many of actually, I think every single one of them was a billionaire. Now they got there in different ways, but the point is those were 6 to 7 dudes that really understood what the heck was going on. And when you've got all of that knowledge in one group, the compounding that you are going to have within your mind, it's going to be astronomical. So surround yourself with people that are more financially literate than you. Shut your mouth and listen to what they have to say. And then the last tip is number 7, know that the psychological shift of your finances changes between when you are saving for retirement versus when you actually retire. So I'm going to read that one more time. Know that the psychological shift of your finances change between when you are saving for retirement as opposed to when you have retired. So there are 3 phases in the retirement life cycle. There's the accumulation phase. That's pretty easy. You start here, you got absolutely nothing, and you're saving for retirement, and you're trying to grow it as much as you can. Then there's this phase where I call it the hump, where you haven't quite retired yet, but you can't keep accumulating at the rate that you are. You got to kind of get ready for this and position it accordingly. And then you've got the decumulation phase, where you are taking money out and living off of your investment returns that you've accumulated all these years. So what is the goal of every single stage? Again, the accumulation stage, pretty cut and dry. You're trying to save as much as you can. You're trying to invest as prudently as humanly possible. And you are trying to maximize your return. Duh. when you get to the hump and you also get to the decumulation phase of retirement, what is the most important thing you need to understand? What is the most important thing that you need to do? It is not maximize the growth of your return on your investment. The main goal that you need when you get to the hump and the decumulation stage of retirement is to first make sure that you can keep up with your standard of living based on the income of your portfolio. Secondarily, whatever is left over, that is what you can quote unquote risk for the long term, because down the road, when you spend down those immediate money needs, in theory, those long-term investments will be able to not only grow, but replace a lot of that money that you have already spent down in retirement. I talk about this in my book extensively. On my course, I actually take to the board and show people this. But when it comes down to it, that psychological shift, if you're young, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and you've got plenty of time until you're going to retire at, let's say, 59 and a half or 60, that's when most people think about it or have retired. You don't really need to have this mindset shift ingrained in your brain, because you're still just accumulating like crazy and trying to just shoot for the moon. But when you are at that hump phase and in retirement, you're suddenly going to get to this point where, and again, I'm making a blanket statement here. Everyone is totally different when it comes to retirement. But more often than not, you're going to have your risk spread out because you're going to need immediate needs of money because you've retired, but you're going to have long-term needs of retirement, long-term retirement monies that will obviously replace those that are immediate. So why am I saying this? Every single year, by definition, if you're just trying to beat the market, it ain't going to happen. And in fact, it's going to be really weird if that does happen, because you have to anchor your return a little bit because you need money for today. I have had conversations with clients about this where they'll say, wow, the market was up this year and our portfolio wasn't up as much. Well, yeah, no duh. One, you're taking money out. And then two, you cannot pool all of that risk and compare it to the market. You cannot do it. Now, those same people go really, really quiet if the market just takes a dump and, their portfolio is still steadily growing up. Never get a call or compliment for that. But you get my point. It has nothing to do with just beating the market. It has everything to do about prudently making sure that you can retire and live off of your terms, not your investments. No timing, market timing, or any of that. You can live off of the income and the interest of your portfolio, and then secondarily, anything left over, that's where you want to go and save that for the long term. But that psychological shift is huge. But if you understand that, especially if you're listening and you're in that hump or you are decumulating or retiring, you are going to be much better off for having that understanding. So that does it for today's episode. And now you have 7 tips to get better with your money. And again, I could have gone through a plethora of other tips, but I thought these were the 7 best tips to get you better with your money. So if you have any questions about today's episode, if you want to take in more Capitalize Your Finances content, if you're interested in our books or our courses, or if you wanted to be a guest on our show, head on over to capitalizepodcast.com. You can look at everything under the surface. You can shoot us a message. You can snag the books. You can snag the course. We would really appreciate it. If you have a personal question that you want me to answer on the show, or you have a personal question that you just want to run by me, you have every right to shoot me an email, chris@capitalizeyourfinances.com, and I will do my absolute best to get back to you as soon as humanly possible. So, as always, I'm your host, Christopher A. Poniotu, the Captain Capitalize, and until next time, keep capitalizing. Take care.
The information provided should not be considered specific tax, legal, or investment advice and is not specific to any individual's personal circumstances. This material was gathered from sources believed to be reliable. However, its accuracy cannot be guaranteed. Different types of investments and/or investment strategies involve varying levels of risk, and there can be no assurance that any specific investment or investment strategy will be profitable. You should always seek counsel of the appropriate advisor prior to making any investment decision. All investments are subject to risk, including the loss of principal. IRA withdrawals will be taxed at ordinary income rates. Withdrawals prior to age 59.5 may also be subject to a 10% penalty tax. Roth IRA IRA distributions of principal from a Roth IRA are tax-free. However, any earnings will be taxed at ordinary income rates, and a 10% penalty tax will apply if withdrawn prior to age 59 and a half or within 5 years of the date the Roth IRA was established, whichever is longer. CDs are FDIC insured up to $250,000 per depositor per insured bank for each account ownership category. Before investing, carefully consider a mutual fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. To obtain a prospectus or summary prospectus which contains this and other information, call your financial advisor. Read the prospectus carefully before investing. It is important to keep in mind that investments in fixed income products are subject to liquidity, interest rate, financial, inflation risks, and special tax liabilities. Interest may be subject to the alternative minimum tax. Christopher Poniotu is a registered representative with and securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC. The investment professionals are affiliated with LPL Financial and are conducting business using the name Capitalize Your Finances, a separate entity from LPL Financial. Any individual or company mentioned in this podcast are not affiliated with Capitalize Your Finances or LPL Financial.